Welcome back to Money Talks, where if you listen to Tom over the past couple months, you would think Chinese stocks suck. But if you had Chinese stocks in your portfolio today and you woke up in the morning, you would be like, what the? I'm your host, Amit, filling in for Justin O, because as you know, nothing must stop the show. I'm here with Tom Nash, whose takes aren't that trash, but if you listened to him yesterday about China, you wouldn't have made a lot of cash. In today's show, we're going to talk about why Chinese stocks are soaring, what to make of the FOMC rate decisions, the Ukraine president asking for more US aid, how A-Rod's new stock project is going to affect athletes, and much more. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Money Talks. I am your host, Amit, filling in for Justin O. Tom, happy to be here. How are you doing today?
Good. Usually when you say happy to be here, it's after you say happy to be here. Tom, how are you? Not the other way around. Discount Justin. Okay, so I'm happy to be here. I'm going to start with my hot take for today.
Okay.
If you've ever been in an abusive relationship or in a relationship where your spouse cheats on you, or maybe you've been the spouse that cheated, you know that once that threshold is crossed, there's no going back. Because, once you put your in somebody else's that you were not supposed to, that's the end of the line. You're going to do it again. So when you have the Chinese government, and we're going to talk about that in a second, elaborate a little bit more about that. When you have the Chinese government basically saying, hey, honey, I promise I'm not going to put my again in other. Do you really want to invest money based on the promises of a known liar? I wouldn't.
Interesting. Very interesting take. We will get into that today. My hot take is that
that's what she said.
Pineapples, that is what she said. Okay. All right. Pineapples do not belong on pizza. I would like everyone in the comments to comment their opinion. I think if pineapples are on pizza, you are a psychopath, and you're probably worse than someone who's cheated on someone, because pineapples on pizza are not supposed to be. So that is
I actually agree with you.
You're good.
Pineapple on pizza is blasphemous.
It's disgusting.
Horrible. It's not even pizza.
It's not even pizza.
Pineapple on pizza is what pizza would be like if the Nazis would won the war. I kid you not. It's horrific.
Very hot take. I agree. There's too much sweetness in the pineapple to match the cheesiness of a pizza. It doesn't make sense to me. It's weird. Well,
good point. Discount Justin.
Thank you.
Poor man's Justin.
Stocks that, speaking of things that don't make sense, Chinese stocks are soaring today. Alibaba is up 34%. NEO is up around 24%. Let's start off with you, Tom, for your first opening take. What are your perspectives on Chinese stocks, and were you wrong about them this whole time?
No, obviously not. This is a head fake from the Chinese government. Look, I want to be serious about this. I don't want to make any jokes because we've done the hot takes and I had my joke time, jokey. Now I want to be serious. So the Chinese government essentially came out today and said something, okay? Let's break down what they said. Let's break it apart. What did they really say? They said two things. Number one, we're going to behave. We're not going to fuck with the companies that are listed in the US to get them delisted. We promise. Okay. And number two, basically, literally they said, we're going to be done our inquisition, persecution, basically purge very, very soon with tech companies. So this is literally what they said. Purge almost done, and we're going to behave. So I find this kind of obscene where nothing has really changed as far as the underlying things that make Chinese companies uninvestable, such as VIE structure. Basically, you're buying contractual rights in the Cayman Island company. Check. Is complete lack of rule of law. Check. No standards of accounting or any sort of audits by the US side of these companies. Complete trash numbers that nobody knows how legit they are. Look at Luckin Coffee and Evergrande. Check. Pretty much every single thing that was wrong with Chinese stocks yesterday is still wrong today. So the only thing that happened is that a bunch of eager people blew their load on the first piece of good news out there and basically ran up the stock. Will it make money for some people? I'm sure. But is this anything more than kind of a initial swing? Look, long term, I think the risk, the beta in the Chinese market is just too big. That's why I don't think institutional money is going to follow this swing. But hey, I've been wrong before, so who knows?
So I get your point there, and it makes sense, and I agree with most of it. I guess the one question that I'm struggling with is, what is the probability that major companies like Alibaba actually get delisted or actually go away? And it's hard for me to reconcile that the Chinese government, knowing that they have a mix between state-based capitalism and common prosperity, would allow a company like Alibaba to not be traded publicly in one of the world's biggest economies like the United States, and would not allow it to have access to that capital. It seems like the probability of all the concerns you talked about are high for small Chinese companies like the JDs of the world, or not JD, the DD Globals that got delisted, but not for the bigger companies of the world.
Okay, so I have a rebuttal for you as far as small probability for small companies. Did you hear about the company called Ant Group?
I did hear about that company.
So Ant Group was supposed to be the biggest IPO in history, $280 billion. The Ant IPO was canceled by the Chinese government for no reason other than we don't want a company that's going to compete with our own state-sponsored currency. That was because, they were basically doing peer-to-peer lending and stuff like that. So Ant IPO was not a small company that's got canceled. You want other examples? How about Didi, the Chinese Uber, that's literally got canceled by the Chinese government for no reason. No reason, because they canceled them for using a VIE structure, which is literally what every other company is using. So Didi got canceled. Ant IPO got canceled, 280 billion. Jack Ma got kidnapped, got replaced with Jack Pa, or God knows what the fuck this new guy is. Tennis player gone missing, came back. Like, what the hell how much more do you need to basically say the risk is just too big? I mean, you're always one bad decision away of a communist bureaucrat from losing your entire investment. I mean,
but is there no value? All that is fair. Is there no value to it? A massive undervaluing of the company? Like when Baba goes from 300 to 70 and people make 30% of their money in one day, is that not a good risk to take? Or is your argument
for swing traders and day traders, it's a great stock because it's so low. There's bound to be a few bounces on good news. But as far as long-term investment, look, if you like Alibaba because you like e-commerce, because you like their business model, buy Amazon. Amazon is safer, better, and in 10 years, it's going to be fucking...
But it's also worth $2 trillion, whereas Baba is not worth that much.
Okay, but again, there's almost, with Amazon versus Alibaba, no risk. It's a staples company. It's not going anywhere. So look, you're buying Alibaba with the hopes that nothing is going to get screwed up. If there's one thing we learned from 2020, 2021, 2022, that things can get screwed up. If I told you 2 years ago we're going to have a global pandemic followed by quasi-hyperinflation fears and a World War III on the brink of nuclear weapon with Russia trying to get back to USSR status, just 3 years ago, you'd have put me in a mental institution. And yet this is a reality. So I wouldn't discount risk.
Yeah, well, makes sense, especially in the context of risk. Leading up from the idea of 3 years, a pandemic, the Fed pumping in trillions of dollars of liquidity into the markets to keep them stable, what has happened as a result of that is obvious. Inflation has not become transitory. And as a result of inflation not becoming transitory, the Fed has to do something. Today, we just had the Fed's meeting, the FOMC meeting, and the rate decision was to increase interest rates by 25 basis points. Now at 0.25% by 2023, looking to be at around 2.8%. What are your first takes on if this interest rate was needed, given what happened to the market, and what's going to happen to stocks as a result of it?
I'm going to defer to you. I'm going to let you start, and then I'm going to sink your ship like a little can in the ocean.
Okay, I think it was a good thing, first of all, because it's good to have a 0.25% interest rate. I was talking to someone a while back and asking them, does the Fed ever actually have to increase rates? And their argument was like, yes, like this is the most natural element of our economy. We haven't raised rates in the past 3 years. Obviously, a pandemic has happened. The only reason stocks really were able to sustain their bull run in 2020, which we see has come crashing down, is because of quantitative easing. So I think it is something that's meaningful. Now, the question becomes, are they going to raise it 0.5 to 0.75? And I think the market decline that has happened in growth stocks and just every sector has been so dramatic that we probably don't need a dramatic increase of rates. But 0.25 seems like nothing, to be honest. It seems like it's healthy.
Okay, that's a fair take. Look, I'm happy. Like, as we were prepping for the show, I was watching the speech from the press conference, whatever the fuck you want to call it, by Jerome Powell. And I was actually pretty impressed.
Basically?
Yeah, because look, first of all, Unlike Biden, he didn't blame Putin for February inflation, which is
That
pretty
was
cool.
insane. That was insane.
It didn't crash the economy. It didn't crash the stock market. It's the first time Jerome Powell speaks in 3 years, doesn't crash the stock market, right? I think basically my conclusion, like Jerome Powell, March 2022 versus Jerome Powell like a year ago, I think inflation was transitory unless it wasn't. And when he said no more inflation, I think he meant no more inflation. More inflation. No,
You got a lot of likes and retweets on that tweet last night, and I was actually annoyed because it's the most overused like joke.
I know.
Just like, why is he getting?
But it's so good. I'm gonna go back to the well every time. It's like a money play in Madden. You know what I mean? It's 2K22, whatever you play. Look, so point 25, right? As expected. Good job, Fed, because it was well communicated. Everybody knew. Everybody was relaxed. Market pretty much responded with the yawn. Good job, Federal Reserve, creating the perfect landing for the first rate hike in 3 years. Really nice. Okay. The question now is how many of the upcoming 5 to 6 hikes are already priced into this market, which is everybody knows the 0.25 is priced in, right? So look, right now, the fact that he didn't do 0.5 and he didn't keep it at 0 guarantees we're probably going at 2% by the end of year. So 2% is where we headed, straight line, right? So the question here, and this is the real discussion that I want to have, is will 2% be enough to stop an inflation that's already at 8%, moving at about 0.9, maybe even a percent a month, right? So I don't know. Like, look, it's like drinking a Pepsi free, sugar-free Pepsi after you have like 8 slices of pizza, like the bucket of Haagen-Dazs. It's like, my guy,
First of all, who eats a bucket of Haagen-Dazs? That's like no one does.
I'm speaking from first-hand experience, by the way. But if you just ate a bucket of Haagen-Dazs and like 7 slices of pizza, you got bigger problems. You can drink like a regular Pepsi, my guy.
Well, the thing is, to rebut against your point, the producer's price index, the PPI, was below expectations at 0.88%. This means a lot of people are saying that inflation might have peaked at 7.9% because if producers are not raising their prices as much as they need to based on the PPI index, that means there isn't a need to raise prices, which means inflation naturally starts to go down. If that happens, then and they raise it to the 8% level they might need to go Paul Volcker style, wouldn't that be a better alternative to just chill out?
Well, that's a really good question. So first of all, look, I'll just tell you something. The PPI or whatever PP you want to use, small PP, big PP, it doesn't matter. The thing is that as energy prices spike, inflation is not going to slow down. It's a basic principle. We're right now at $100 per barrel. People seem to think that 100 is not that much because we already touched 130, right? So 100 a barrel is as high as we can sustain as an economy. If it stays that long at 100, we're going to pay the price. Inflation is not going to stop at 8%. I guarantee you that. So the question is, how much we need realistically to tackle like an 8% inflation. So I talked about this with you multiple times when we spoke, right? We have a principle called the Taylor rule. The Taylor rule basically says if the Fed looks at 2% as the baseline, and whatever it is you have, let's say 8%, so you have a difference of 6%, the gap, right?
Right.
For that gap, you have to multiply by 2 percentage points to get the real rate you need to stop inflation. So realistically, we need 12% today if you just look at the Taylor rule. Now, look, 12% from 0 to 12%, I mean, the point isn't to slam the economy into a wall. You can't do that, obviously, right?
Right.
So, and the other thing is, look, 12% alone, it's not going to help. Also, it's not really feasible. So from in the past 8 years, we went to 120% GDP to debt. That means we have 1.2 debt over GDP. Yeah?
Yeah.
Last year, we paid more than 560 billion of interest on our national debt, and that's with 0 interest rates, or close to 0, right? So just to give you an example, if you combine Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett, they're all worth like 500 billion. So that's what we paid just in interest last year. every 1% of rate hikes the Fed is going to implement is going to cost us 200 billion. So the Fed is pretty much, it's locked out of the system, because what it's trying to do right now is basically trying to buy time for the government to try and figure out how to fix this, because the Fed can't really raise interest rates beyond that point. If we actually had cheap oil, cheap labor, right, and we had growth on the GDP sector to generate tax revenue, and we could move more debt from the variable short term to the 30-year fixed, then we could actually see the Fed do their thing. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if the Fed had actually been able to do what they want without the constraints of the national debt, we would already been at 3-4% right now, today. Make no mistake about it. The 0.25 is just a lip service to do something, because until the government fixes the problem of the debt, they can't move on the interest rates, and we're pretty much screwed.
Well, it looks like we're going to have something like a Paul Volcker style to get it out of this, hopefully. But if that doesn't happen, then we are going to be in for quite the roaring 20s this decade to see what happens. Speaking...
Mother lover, you didn't even know who Paul Volcker... You thought that's an actor from Fast and the Furious 2 weeks ago until I explained to you who that is.
Well, that's why I had on the podcast 2 months ago. I learned about Paul Volcker. Every time I talk about it, I sound so intelligent now. I'm just regurgitating whatever.
You thought this was Vin Diesel just like 2 weeks ago until I explained to you who he was.
Speaking of borrowing money, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky asked Congress for more aid. He also asked to set up a no-fly zone, which may get a little political, but let's focus on the aid section. Should the United States be giving aid in a battle that is not our battle? And what is your perspective on giving money to foreign countries?
I think we absolutely have to help them. There's no question about it, bro. Look, we're talking about there's an erosion in the role of the United States being the policeman of the world, right? We used to be so angry at George W. Bush for pushing that agenda. Now the world is missing it. Everybody is looking like, oh shit, like we need somebody, because everybody wants to freaking kill each other. We need somebody to be able to be strong enough to manage this shit and just to tell people to chill. The US is looking at the situation, I think, correctly, because this is very different from World War II. Like, it took US a long time to get out of the, we don't have anything to do with it. They're looking and they're saying, look, this is a potential game changer. If Ukraine falls to Putin, that's a potential beginning of a whole new cluster freak in Europe, because then Moldova is next, and then potentially more NATO countries will get challenged. I mean, Ukraine is pretty much the watershed moment for Putin's expansion plans, and we absolutely have to make him pay. And the only way to make him pay is to sanction his ass and help the Ukrainians to bleed him as much as possible. We absolutely owe it as if we have any sort of moral high ground we want to stand on. And I'm not saying the US is perfect. I'm not saying we've never lied and we've never done fucked up shit. But I'm saying right now, this is a situation where it's very clear who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. And we absolutely have to help Ukraine.
I would agree. I got some message today in my Discord where people are asking why we're giving money to foreign countries. And I was just like, well, it's obvious. If the United States claims to be the freest, bravest economy and country in the world from a democratic human rights perspective, then when something is obviously a violation of human rights and we're not giving any allocation of capital to help those countries, we cannot be that reserve currency for the world. We cannot be that base that the rest of the world looks to when a human rights violation happens. And again, America's not perfect. We have our own issues. But if we don't step up in times like these and put our money where our mouth is, it is very likely that other values and paradigms of values from other countries begin to take over, especially if they essentially occupy other entire nations. So,
and don't forget, in 1994, that's the other part of why we have to help Ukraine. In 1994, we told Ukraine, hey, give your nukes back to Russia and we'll give you guarantees that will keep you safe.
Right.
So Ukraine had nukes that would pretty much prevent this war. They gave it back to Russia based on our assurances that will keep them safe. And now we're just standing by and...
Wait, I didn't know that at all. That changes everything. If we convince them to get rid of their nukes,
yep,
that's a big deal. Wow.
Yeah, well, there's a flip side to that. The flip side is that there's arguments that it's not really clear how serviceable those nukes were because they were
Right.
Soviet era nukes.
Right.
So, but I'm sure, like, even if you take like one like shitty Soviet era nuke and just drop it from a helicopter, it's gonna cause like mayhem. I mean, just the threat of a nuke. I mean, even Putin's nukes, 80% of them probably don't even fucking work. But just the sheer threat of that keeps people at bay.
Well, Alex Rodriguez is trying to make heaven on earth by becoming a multi-billionaire because he has invested in a new company called Mojo, which is aiming to create a stock market for professional athletes where, I quote, fans can buy and sell players, because that doesn't sound crazy, at specific values based on their on-field performances. Is this, Mr. Tom Nash, the eventual evolution? Will people be able to buy stock in YouTubers one day? Is there a world in which buying people and fractional shares of people an ethical thing?
I think that this is like, first of all, when you explain it, it sounds like slavery.
Yes, that actually is what it sounds like.
I'm not sure I want to own people, even like metaverse people. I think it's horrible. When you see washed up athletes try to jump on the whatever they think is the new kind of wave of NFTs and shit, it's the moment to get out of NFTs, bro. This is literally the moment when you go to the grocery store and the old lady is talking to you about her portfolio. I had that moment in 2017. I kid you not. I was in a water cooler at the firm I was working at. There was an office administrator. I was about to say an office administrator there. I absolutely hated her. She's like, anyways, so every time I saw her,
you don't hate people easily. You're a nice person. You don't hate people.
No, I hate people easily, but she was really like, never mind. And as I was leaving, every time I saw her, I was trying to get out. And she was telling me about how she's excited about, she just bought some Bitcoin at $18,000. And I was like, at that moment, I knew sell. I knew when Alex Rodriguez, with all due respect, don't sue me, Alex, starts getting into NFTs and especially ridiculous ones, it's time to get out. This is the beginning of the end.
I can see that point. I do think, though, that if we're transitioning into the world of the metaverse, the inevitable appropriation of human beings as a commodity, it is inevitable, because the whole idea of the metaverse is the virtual self is more valuable than the physical self. So if you could buy stock in, LeBron James when he was 2018, even if it's a NFT-oriented smart contract version of his value, if he wins 5 championships, like, that's worth money at the end of the day. So there is a market for it, and I do see this potentially being successful if they brand it correctly.
But Gary Vee's already doing it with the cards, with the sports cards. There's already like a whole industry around the NFTs of the sports cards. What's the point of this thing? Like,
it would be contingent on the like, can you buy options? If they're saying it's a stock trading platform, do they really build out
if they do it, I'm gonna short Alex Rodriguez like 140%.
Yeah, what happens when drugs come out? Is it a fraud now? Do we have a class action lawsuit when we know they're doing steroids?
He might even use steroids and NFTs, bro. Like, man, when you see these athletes, bro, starting to dabble with this nonsense, it's time to get out, bro.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of Money Talks. Thank you for putting up with me as the discount host for Justin today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one.
I'm going to go cry in a fetal position in my shower.
Good job, guys.
Good job, everybody except Amit.